the rotunda, this rotunda here has seen many historical things. A gathering in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Montana Constitution is a unique activity to be here in this historical rotunda. So the acoustics here are not quite as good as upstairs, so if you can kind of keep it toned down a little bit, quietly grab a sandwich if you need to. In the meantime, let me say that it's a real pleasure for me to introduce our guest speaker here at lunch. You know, I've been knocking around this Capitol since Diana Dowling can tell you in 1969 in August when we met upstairs on the 4th floor to start working for Forrest Anderson on reorganization. And I've been knocking around here for those, what now are 53 years. And I've worked with and for a lot of elected officials. But between the years of 2005, January 2005, and 2013, I had the opportunity to work with and for Governor Brian Schweitzer, and I have to say, just simply that was the pinnacle of my activity in this Capitol. An experience I wouldn't trade for any other, and I won't bore you with a long introduction. I want to give you our guest speaker, former Governor Brian Schweitzer.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm up at Seeley Lake, and while the rest of western Montana has been getting all this rain they're talking about, during the last 30 days, we've only got 1.5 inches. So I was up at 4 o'clock this morning irrigating so I could skedaddle down here and have a little chat, and then I got to go back, get to irrigating again. You know, I haven't been back in Helena. I've only been back in Helena twice since I left the governor's office. And kind of on purpose, because I believe that you know, the new governors and the new legislature, they didn't want somebody leaning over their shoulder telling them how we used to do things. You know how that is. So I've stayed the heck out of here. But now we're back in this Capitol Rotunda. And I remember after I was elected, the current governor was in charge of everything, and we had a transition. And usually there's, you know, half a dozen offices that are available because a new governor has got to pick about 1,000 people to be part of that new administration. Well, the governor told us that there was no room in the inn, so we set up card tables right here in this rotunda, and the press were there when every single person came in and left, and they were able to see everything that was going on. When we had the inauguration here, it was kind of like this room, and I still remember the people that were in charge of the Capitol. They told us, now we've got to look at the list of things you plan to do there, and you can't do that. They said to start with, you can't have incense in here. You can't have Native people bringing that sage and that sweetgrass and that cedar. It would violate the smoke. Well, to hell with that. We said these Native people have been doing this in Montana for 14,000 years, and they'll do it on the day that I'm inaugurated. Well, they told us there was a big drum in here. There was a big drum that day where you could have 7 drummers around that drum, and they were playing that drum. But before, they told us, no, you can't bring that drum in here. A drum that size could break these windows. And I said, well, if we break those windows, everybody in Montana and beyond will know that there's a new Montana that respects the first Montanans. Well, After I was sworn in, the guy who was running against me, he told Montana, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's not even been in the governor's office ever. And I never had. He was right. And so after I was sworn in, I turned to the press that were there that day. Some of the press is here today, and they'll remember it. And I said, well, I've never been in the governor's office. Some of you have been there before. Could you lead me down there? So they did. They led me down to the office of suite, and we went through that big door, and then you go down and you take a left, and then you take a right, and you go by 3 offices, and then all the way back in the corner, some of you have seen that office on Yellowstone. It's the real office. And there wasn't much there. There was a big desk, and there was like a coffee table and a few chairs, and a couple of law books that had never been opened on the shelf back there. But on the table, there was a key. A key. And I picked up that key, and I went back to the door, and I checked to see if it fit the door, and it did. So I held it up to the press, and I said to him, your job is to make sure that that door stays open the whole time that I'm here. And I threw that key in the garbage, and that door never closed for 8 years, because you had a right to be in that office. In our Constitution, it's a remarkable Constitution, I picked a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. Now, Article 2 in the Constitution, that's the part that tells each and every one of us what our rights are. One by one, what you as an individual have a right to do. And maybe one of the most important, and I'm going to read it so I'll get it right. Section 9 is your right to know. No person shall be deprived of a right to examine documents or the deliberation of all public bodies or agencies of state government and its subdivisions, except the demand of an individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure. Well, after the Constitution was written, there was a lot of legislators, and they'd say, well, gosh, we see that, but I mean, what does that, you can't possibly mean when 3 government employees are out fly fishing and they start talking about work, somebody has to take notes. Well, so they had some legislation that covered that. And well, they said, well, yeah, but even legislators, when you got 5 legislators and they're downtown and they're getting thick steaks and old whiskey bought by the Anaconda Company or Montana Power, or I guess they call them Northwestern Energy now. Well, that shouldn't count, right? Well, so they passed some legislation that said, well, there needs to be a quorum when you're a legislator. There's got to be a quorum. Now you know what a quorum is. That's the majority of the people that are sitting in a committee. And, well, they keep attacking this Constitution. I noticed in the last legislature, if you can imagine, the Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee was meeting, and I think there's something like 18 or 19 of them on the committee. There was 11 from the majority party, and I think about 8 from the minority party. And they were meeting in public, and the press was there, and they were discussing your right to health care privacy. Well, at some point they thought, well, we don't really want to talk about that with the press here. So they adjourned it, and the majority party went to a separate room and closed the door. And they said to the press, you can't come in here, because, well, in order to have a quorum, we'd have to have X amount, but we're going to have that guy stand outside for 10 minutes, and then we're going to have him come back in and somebody else go out, and we're going to rotate this thing so we stay just under a quorum. Ladies and gentlemen who wrote this Constitution, was that your plan? Was it your plan to allow people who work for all of us in the legislature to rig the system? So you don't know? So you can't hear? I don't think so. Now, I noticed Public Service Commission. They had an audit here a few years back. And the auditors, and and every division of government gets audited. That's part of what we do. It's our money. We like to know how it's spent. So they audited the Public Service Commission, and they said, oh my God, you got a lot of things. We got money that's not accounted for, you're not taking care of your invoices properly. There's a lot of things you got to fix around here. All right. Public Service Commission said, okay, so the 5 members of the Public Service Commission, they went on about their business, and of course then they were audited a few years later. Well, in the meantime, there had been a little bit of press about the Public Service Commission. They weren't getting along with each other, apparently. All of them were from the same party, but they got to the point where they were spying on each other and bullying each other. And then one of them called the Highway Patrol and said, "You got to get over here because one of the Public Service Commissioners brought a pistol into the office." That's the kind of things they were doing. And then, of course, the auditors, they found something else. They said, "Well, we really don't understand. It used to be at the Public Service Commission there was a limit to how much travel they could do. They had a limit. They had a maximum amount you could spend, each one of them." Well, they'd kind of done away with that. And as you know, Public Service Commission in Montana is important. They got important work. They regulate the public natural gas, electricity, and the taxis. Well, this public service thought, the public service commissioners thought, well, we're just going to travel every place in the world's got electricity and taxi cabs. So they started traveling a lot. Now, it wasn't enough that they were making $109,000 a year and had one meeting a week. They were taking these trips, and the auditors found they were changing the invoices so they could pocket more money. Well, all of this going on, and the Lee newspapers, you've heard of them before, right? That's the largest news gathering organization in Montana that collects this information so that you have a right to know. They said, okay, enough is enough. We're gonna have to know some details here. So they asked, for some paperwork. Well, chair of the Public Service Commission came back after a couple weeks and said, oh, no, we can't do that. That's a lot of work. You're going to have to pay $31,000 to see the documents that already belong to the people of Montana because you have a right to know. Well, the Lee newspaper said, well, you got 5 commissioners there and you got more than 30 people working there, a half a dozen lawyers. I mean, you don't have enough time to dig up these documents we're asking? Nope, we don't have the time. Well, thank God that we have a constitution that instructed a judge to instruct the Public Service Commission to give those documents to us, the people. I'll tell you the other one. This is pretty near and dear to my heart. Once again, it's Article 2, and it's a declaration of your individual rights. And this is a value in Montana, and you'll recognize what I'm talking about. I'm a grandchild of homesteaders, and they valued their privacy like each and every one of your families value your privacy. Section 10, right of privacy. The right of an individual privacy is essential to the well-being of society and shall not be infringed without showing of compelling state interest. In the last legislative session, the Judiciary Committee, in that hearing, what they were talking about was taking away your privacy in your healthcare decisions. And they didn't want you to know that they were taking away your privacy, so they violated the Constitution by going into another room to talk about how they could take your privacy away. Now, we value privacy in Montana. 2005, the first year I was governor, the Republicans and the Democrats, they came together in the legislature and they said, we don't think this new Patriot Act that they passed in Washington, D.C. respects Montanans' right to privacy. We don't think you've done a very good job. So they wrote a letter, signed it, I signed it, and we said to Congress, why don't you repeal that Patriot Act because it takes the right of privacy away from Americans? Well, we never heard back, as you might imagine. A little while later, they passed something called the Real ID. And they told states, including Montana, yeah, we don't trust your paperwork out there. Driver's license doesn't mean anything anymore. We're going to have a real ID issued by the federal government. We're going to have to do a little background check before we give you that real ID. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to get on an airplane. Well, I told the Secretary of Homeland Security, no can do, we can't do that. That's not something we're going to do in Montana. We don't think the federal government ought to be involving themselves in our privacy. Well, Michael Chertoff gave me a call. I was down in that office down there and gave me a call. He explained to me, Governor, this is not going to work. And he explained to me all the reasons why we have got to pass this real ID and we've got to respect it, and how the state of Montana is going to be set back. He said, in fact, if you don't have a real ID, Montanans are not going to be able to get on an airplane. So I said to the Secretary of Homeland Security, well, I kind of see that as an advantage. Because you see, tourism is the number 2 industry in Montana, and if all of these national meetings have to be held in the one place where people can't leave, they'll come to Montana. And there was silence of about 20 seconds, and he knew that was it. He gave up, and I didn't hear from him again. 50 years ago, those of you who had family members who wrote the best Constitution in America, the Constitution that gives the individual more rights than any Constitution in America, the only Constitution in America that says you have a right to know, the only one. Only 10 others have any mention of privacy in the Constitution, and of course, as you know, the Constitution in the United States of America doesn't say anything about privacy. It doesn't give you any right to privacy. It's under attack today. Remember I mentioned to you about the Public Service Commission and the chair of the Public Service Commission telling Lee newspapers you have no right to know? The people of Montana have no right to know about what we've been doing with our invoices and about guns coming or not coming or anything else that we're doing here, and you've got to pay $31,000 if you want that information? Well, now you got that chair running for the Montana Supreme Court. What could go wrong? You have a legislator who is running for the Public Service Commission, and he's referred to our Constitution as, a socialist rag, is what he described it as. He's running for the Public Service Commission. Right now, he's roughly 30% of the Republican vote in that primary. He's 74 votes behind the other person in that primary. I don't know how it ends, but if we have somebody in the Public Service Commission that doesn't agree with our Constitution, it doesn't end well. You know, some of you heard this and some of you know this, but after the framers of Constitution, the U.S. Constitution had been at work for some period of time. They finished their work, and Benjamin Franklin, he had come up for air, and when Benjamin Franklin comes up for air, it meant he was going to go down to the pub and have a beer. So he's having a beer. The lady came up to him, and she said, "What did you do in there? Did you create a monarchy or a republic?" And he said, "Ma'am, we've created a republic if you can keep it." Those of you who are the framers of Montana's Constitution, that's your task. 50 years ago, our friends and family, people who are here today, they crafted this remarkable document, this document that stands above all other 50 states, this document that is the envy of 50 states. And it'll be our Constitution if you can keep it. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Keep it in mind. I want to introduce Charles Walking Child, who's going to introduce our drum group and dancers. Charles?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I really want to say that we are honored to have Governor Schweitzer, former Governor Schweitzer, here talking about the Constitution and how important and vital it is to us people of Montana. He brought up the state constitution drafted 50 years ago, which allowed more of us state citizens to have rights. He also opened a door for Native Americans in this beautiful capital to sing when we were not invited. But let me tell you one thing, is that we have the original flag of the United States of America that was given to my ancestors, and we fought in the revolution against England, and we got factual proof of that. I'm very honored that we are starting to rise and make a presence, but it's up to each and every one of us to get our family members involved. Out here I see a lot of elders in the audience. It's so important you get a hold of your children and grandchildren, because that's how vital we've come to in America. A lot of people don't realize that the Constitution was changed. The United States Constitution was changed in 1992, taking away individual rights, not allowing states to have more power. We need statesmen that represent this federal government, not politicians. I want to introduce my family and my wife, Amanda Walkingchild, and my sister-in-law, Autumn Desjarlais, the Wanesa singers. Wanesa singers is their name. That's always been their name. It means long hair. And along with them is Carrie, Gopher. They're going to be dancing here. And my daughter, Shayla Walkingchild, my niece, who I take just like my daughter, Miriam Daniels, her mother, Autumn Daniels, and my youngest of 9, Bisim Biesu Talik. He's the only one that we've given a native name to. That means sun, thunderbird, humble. And we're fighting and speaking up for his generation to come. So I need all of you to get involved, get your family involved, and let's protect our Constitution right here that was drafted 50 years ago. Thank you, Schweitzer, for opening the door, opening relationships for the Native Americans of the state of Montana. You've done a great deal for our people. And I also want to say that Conrad Burns done many things for our native tribes in Montana. So with that, I'd like to have my wife and sister-in-law sing a song while Carrie and Miriam and Shayla and Bisim dance. We're going to have a couple of performances for you. Carrie Gopher is going to be dancing Fancy, correct? And it represents the butterfly. And my children and my niece are going to be dancing Anishinaabe Ojibwe style dancing. And they're going to dance 2 songs. Hurry up, the Power Rangers are waiting for you to get out there and dance. They're going to watch you dance. I'd just like to say this too, ladies and gentlemen, and those citizens of the state of Montana, I really don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, but like I said, the flag that we have that's older than Congress itself, with an agreement with this government, and the vital position we're in protecting our Constitution of the United States and the state of Montana, we would like your help to help us preserve that flag stored in this Capitol, telling our story from our journey of the 1300s out to the East Coast to fight along with the Potawatomis and the Miami tribe. That's a history that has not been foretold. The government has been trying not to be honest about its history, so please think about it. Let's preserve this flag that's older than Congress. Let's store it in here. Let's have a display of how important it is for us to maintain our state constitution with individual rights, including reinforcing the Constitution of 1776, instilling individual rights to us as a people. We were to build a nation together. There's a prophecy behind that. We were to build a nation together. And it's not this nation that's existing right now. We're going to hit some trying times, but God bless each and every one of you. Saakitin, that means I love you. And hopefully you'll reach out and help us. Thank you very much, and thank all of you for gathering here.
Thank you, and an important part of us gathering together is that we get the chance to share time with each other, not just listening to speakers and so on, is to share time with each other. And luckily, we now have some time on our hands where we're going to break up here. You have plenty of time to mix with whoever you might want to mix with. You need to reconvene upstairs. We start at 1:15, so starting about 1 o'clock, start showing up there. And we're going to start with the reading of the preamble of the Constitution at 1:15. So let's all start heading to the doors at 1, but enjoy your time together. Thank you.